And hello, we're back as promised with Corey Maccabee, who should be to my left, and Robert Hubbard, who is now below me. And Robert is probably going to take most of the questioning, and we're going to. So, first off, most of you probably know Corey Maccabee from The American Astronaut, which is a movie we have featured prominently as one of the 366 weirdest movies of all time. And
Thank you.
we will talk about that and about, then we're going to get into his new project, which is Deep Astronomy and the Romantic Sciences. And we'll find out about that and also about what Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club is. And there were some other projects in between American Astronaut and this latest stuff. Oh, also we will ask about a mysterious new screenplay. Maybe he can't tell us anything about it. So.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you everything. I got no secrets.
All right.
Yeah.
I do hope that the final product will be named New Screenplay, and that's not just a holding title.
Well, I might get talked into that at some point.
At any rate. So just to start out, I'm just going to ask a quick question about The American Astronaut to satisfy my own curiosity, and then I'll turn most of the questioning over to Robert. But I was wondering what scene do you get asked about the most? Because I'm wondering if it's the same scene I'm thinking of.
It's usually the Hey Boys scene,
Oh,
the dance in the bathroom. That's a lot of people's favorite moment, or the one that sticks out more to some people. I think that one probably got more traction as a single clip on YouTube, and that's what drew a lot of people into it. But yeah, that, and people always ask, what happened between Professor Hess and Samuel Curtis. Things that I'd never talk about. By the way, I feel I haven't seen myself like this. I've got a big beard.
Yeah,
I just let it go for the past month or two, thinking, oh, let it
it
grow
suits
for.
you.
You think so? I don't know. I haven't seen it on screen before. This is really, it's kind of odd looking. It's kind of like the first time I shaved my head, I didn't recognize my own shadow. Uh, but
well,
it's just for holidays. It's holiday dressing.
Mhm.
I was going to say either your hair grows really fast, or there's an invention called a mirror you could look into.
You know, uh, I'm trying to wean myself from that invention. It tells me too many stories.
Those are great scenes.
Perfect answer. Perfect. Um,
The scene I was thought you might get the most questions about, or inquiries about, that the Hey Boy scene I can see because it's on YouTube, and also I do think it's probably the catchiest single from the movie.
mm,
I was thinking of the Long Hertz Donut monologue.
Oh, yeah, Tom, I love that joke. When I wrote that, everybody who read the screenplay said, "Oh, I really like the screenplay. You got to get rid of this joke." Um, and I remember Stuart Stern was one of my advisors at a workshop at the Sundance Screenwriters Workshop in 1990 something, and he's the one. He wrote Rebel Without a Cause and
mhm.
uh, the TV Sybil. He wrote a lot of things, but anyway, he gave me back my screenplay with all these notes written all over it, and they were just beautiful and interesting. But that one joke just next to it, he wrote, "I don't know how you expect anybody to sit through this long sadistic monologue." And so when everybody's like, "Oh, you got to get rid of that," just make it like a one-liner or something. I was like, no, it's got to be this thing. And then we brought in people to audition for it, and it was just torture watching people tell that joke. And I would make everybody do it twice, because I figured if I couldn't sit through it twice, then nobody else could. And then Tom Aldridge came in and read for it, and just was everything that I thought this thing was supposed to be when I wrote it. I mean, he even looked like my grandfather in the shirt that I dressed him as. I was kind of styled him after my grandfather, and he just nailed it. And
Mhm.
that joke is something where that's sort of the test. You can, like, there's a chemistry to each audience. You know, every audience is different, and they respond to not just the film differently, but to each other differently. And hello, there's food coming through. Uh, so anytime that joke comes on, I'll just sit and listen. I mean, usually if it's screening, I'll sit through the whole thing just to listen to the audience to see how they react to everything. But that joke, you can always tell what an audience is going to be like. And I remember one time we showed it in Manhattan, and it was the same night, a 7 o'clock screening and a 9 o'clock screening. The 7 o'clock screening, basically that joke got a standing ovation. The 9 o'clock screening, everybody sat uncomfortably hoping it would end soon. So that's the test for that film for me, is how people respond to that. That was a long story. And
Yeah.
food came through. Everything happened.
All right.
Was,
Well, good.
was
I'm
that
glad.
Willa? Was that Willa? who
No,
came through?
that's my wife, Amy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Staged. Well, I guess from that should probably get into um, from American Astronaut, which you may come back to, but what you're doing now, which is this deep astronomy and the romantic sciences, which since I follow you on Facebook, I've been reading about the past few years, and reading the description of it, it seems so simple. It reading it, the premise is very simple, and yet when I've tried to explain it to Greg, I seem to kind of get lost and convoluted. But
I have a hard
I
time
would
explaining that
say
one
like
too.
you could go, if you could kind of tell us what it's about.
Well, actually, when you were making the introduction earlier, you brought up Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club. Can I start with
Mhm.
that?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes. What is?
Well, Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club, I at one point I wanted to make a film. I didn't have any funding sources or anything like that, so I wanted to make a film that was yay. I wanted to make a film that was because there was no funding, and also because I'd worked with people for years, that whenever um people would say, hey, when you come through our town, come stay at our house, or we'll make you dinner or something. And everyone was like, no, I don't want to do that. And I always kind of wanted to. So I hit a point where I thought, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to basically just say yes to everybody and take everybody up on their offers and try to make a global collaborative art project. And it started off with graphic design. In fact, the reason I chose the name Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club was I thought it opened itself up to a lot of
Possibilities.
opportunity. Yeah, a lot of possibilities. It was pregnant with possibilities.
Well,
And so
I have to say that like with Captain Ahab and Motorcycle Club are sort of things that I think will kind of like really kind of make make things fruitful, because they don't normally go together in the way of thinking. But
yeah, it created its own aesthetic, and people all over the world made their own chapter patches for their cities, and there was all sorts of artwork for it. And I didn't know what I was doing. I've never done this before. There was no map. It was all, just rolling with the punches. And so then I thought, well, we should have live events. So what I did was I recorded a bunch of songs that were very simple pieces with a friend of mine, Matt Cowan. And we recorded these songs together, just auto harp and keyboards and, hands clapping and stuff. And I would go out and I would sing to these recordings. And I told people they could download these recordings. They could download each individual track. They could make their own tracks. I wanted everyone to make their own mixes. And as long as my scratch vocal, which they could download separately, fit their track, I should be able to download it and perform it on stage that night.
mm-hmm.
And so I went out on tour. And at first I was just recording or performing to my own recordings. And then I went to Australia, and they had other bands perform with me doing their interpretation. So that was fun. And then I did a 2-month tour across the US with that one guy, and we played 6 nights a week. And halfway through the tour, I started getting slammed with recordings. And it was great. It was really great. And I learned a lot. One thing I learned was that I don't know anything. There was certain points where like there was this one song which had this very like triumphant like run ta ta dun ta ta dun thing, and I'd be on stage going, "You made your," very bold and loud. And people who were sending me tracks for that were same thing, like run ta ta dun ta ta dun. And this one gentleman, I'll say his name because I was so excited by what he did. His name was Gabe Petrie. He's part of Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club. And at the time, he wasn't living anywhere. And he had his stuff in storage. And so he somehow made this track, and it was totally different. It had like foghorns and went bloop, 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 bloop. And I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to perform to this? Like I couldn't find a beat or anything. So I got on stage and I just, because I wanted to honor everything everybody sent me. And so I got on stage and just did my best, just laid into it as hard as I could. And that one guy comes up to me afterwards and goes, are you going to do that again tomorrow? That was intense. And I said, yeah. He goes, every time you perform to that track, I want to watch, because that was just amazing. And so then a couple from Stuttgart, Germany contacted me and said, we love this track. We want to use it for an animated piece. And so it just kind of took on a life of its own. And the thing is, if I was in the room when he was recording that track, I would have been going, no. It must be like, but instead he did something totally out of the blue, sent it in, and I used it, and it kind of blossomed and became its own item. And so I learned a lot through this process. So anyway, Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club. So now I got the graphics, I got the music. All right, I mean, a live, event component. And I thought, all right, well, we need a film. So I wanted to make a film about Abraham Lincoln's embalmer. Yeah. And
which I remember seeing it was announced, and that sounded very intriguing.
It's an interesting story. I mean, they put him in a train and took him around the country for 2.5 weeks. And he wasn't sitting too pretty. He got bad reviews by the press, and and if you've got like hundreds of thousands of people lining up to walk past his body close by, and you're the person in charge of it, and it starts to decay, and it's this brand new science, there's some tension, there's some drama. So I thought it was an interesting story. But it proved to be a bad match for the collaborative, for the Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club collaborative. While that was becoming apparent, I was asked to go perform at a festival in Poland, and I wanted to do this performance, but I didn't, and they were going to pay me, and I thought, okay, well, and they were going to pay me, well, which nobody does.
Always good.
It always is good if it should ever happen. And so I thought, well, I can't use Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club music to do this because that's other people's work, and I'm not going to get paid for it. And, there's no way to divvy it up and all that. So I'll do something new. So I wrote the Small Star Seminar, and I went and performed that. Immediately, people from Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club started making artwork for the Small Star Seminar. And whenever I'd go do performances, people would film the performances and give me the footage after the shows. And I'm like, okay, this is organic, so let's just follow this and see what happens. So I started weaving in science lectures, and and eventually it just became science lectures after a while.
Well, I can recall like going back through the material, because I think at that time you started following the butterfly, the monarch migrations.
Right. Well, actually, that happened. That all kind of came together with the Lincoln thing. I was working with a lot of people who worked in the Green Burial movement, and then in 2013, I played a singing cowboy in a documentary for German television, where we followed the monarch butterfly migration from Chicago down to Michoacan, Mexico. And to do that, I had to basically learn everything I could about butterflies, and have been continuing to learn about butterflies. And so when COVID started, I'll come back to the movie in a minute, but when COVID started, I was locked down and I was, kind of getting involved in green burial, the information about that. So I started just going on the phone and reaching out to organic cemeteries, green burial grounds, and conservation cemeteries, and talking to them about replenishing the milkweed and the native wildflowers on some of their properties to help the monarch migration go back and forth from Canada to Mexico. And it was an easy pitch, who doesn't want butterflies at their funerals? And so, and I didn't get anything out of it other than, doing this. And I also worked with universities. I just got back from Birmingham, Alabama, where their sustainability department was one of the first people to work with me. And they've got all these butterfly gardens all over their university now. So a couple of years ago, I decided I'd like to go visit these cemeteries and follow the monarch butterfly migration down the East Coast. There's a small migration that goes down the East Coast. And I've never driven or ridden a motorcycle or done anything on the road. And I never had a bike except for when I was a little kid, and it was a piece of garbage. So I thought, well, I'd like to ride a bike from Maine to Florida and follow the migration path. So 2 years ago, I got a bike, learned how to ride it. And last year I rode from Maine to Florida and followed the migration path. And I brought stickers. I made stickers. I gave them to everybody, every man, woman, and child, in every parking lot, in every gas station, everywhere, and just talked about butterflies the whole trip and just had the best time. It was amazing. So,
it seems like with the bike, because I noticed on the page that you still do the biking. What I was about to say is that during COVID, and you started doing the lectures.
Yep.
And sort of like I assume like sort of incorporating some of the knowledge that you picked up. I remember the Red Planet Planning Commission, which has a site and which had the pitch, basically a way to terraform Mars. But also I just was going through that stuff last night. Some interesting things about embalming, which I assume kind of came through when you were looking at researching the embalmer, and some other like scientifically valid concepts, and presenting them in this sort of like this almost kind of a corporate infomercial. But it made the concepts very relatable and understandable. And actually, I guess with that, there's that, and also cultured cell culture. And I guess you had that coming up as something as factual functional fiction, which is sort of like you take like all these concepts and then put them in these narratives to understand. And I found it fascinating. I know a little. I've heard some of those concepts, and I know sort of the persona. It's almost sort of like Swifty. It's almost sort of Swiftian. Some of the ideas. So you're not so it's sort of like, well, it's a valid idea, but but I guess if you were going to kind of like put it out there, so their reaction is going to be like, oh my God, what? So you degenerate. And yet this way kind of like enables them to kind of like lay out the case and kind of say, okay, there's some valid science behind it, and not get into other aspects that might make people kick.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that kind of inspired that was seeing these guys who are just geniuses in their field talking about things that make absolute perfect sense, and then at the end try to sell you face cream or something like that, and so I started watching that, and I used that as an example, and just made these as a form of entertainment. They grew out of the Small Star Seminar because I was performing to recordings. I would have a 3-minute blank in between before the last song where I would try to improvise science lectures, and then the last song would just pop on in the middle, and I'd stop and start singing. And then I started making PowerPoint presentations that had the songs in them, and
They come on.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's from Frankfurt, Germany. That performance. That was a real fun night. So then I started getting into it, like the Cultured Cell Culture performance. It's not a PowerPoint presentation. It's a half-hour animated film that I lecture and sync to, and that whole idea is selling cruelty-free cannibalism to the
Cannibalism,
human
which is like,
species. Yeah. Actually, my lectures and a lot of that stuff, I'm self-publishing a book. Nobody's seen it.
Which I was going to mention. You have a book coming out, I think, next week called Three Dimensional Losers.
You're the first person to say it. Yeah, Three Dimensional Losers. Yeah, I ordered a copy and it was totally messed up, so I had to design it and send it back in. And I'm going to get a copy tomorrow and take a look at it. But if somebody buys it, they're going to get a maybe a copy in flux. We'll see.
So is that like a collection of this lecture material that you've been doing the last few years? Or
Yeah, it's got the lectures, it's got some illustrations, it's got finale in it. I don't know if you ever, during COVID, I did this performance about a clown that was genetically a clown, and has copper-based blood as opposed to iron-based blood. And so the the tagline is when a clown gives his life for yours, the least you could do is smile. And so it's so finale's in there. I want to get that out. And so Three Dimensional Losers. I also, that script that I just wrote, I'm kind of thinking about maybe I don't know. I'll see how I like having a book out there. Maybe instead of pursuing a film first, put the screenplay out. Just let people get the screenplay to see if people enjoy reading the screenplay.
Well, I know we should be talking about the movie, but just a couple things I wanted to kind of get out before that. I seem to recall reading you also wrote an opera.
Yeah, that the opera. That's a movie that will never be made, and it's the most money I ever made off of anything I've ever done. Two companies came on and supported me while I developed the opera. It was based on an 1850s melodrama, and one company I worked with just couldn't really kind of get in sync, and they would give me a lot of suggestions and notes, and I was like, I couldn't do anything with them. And I thought, wow, I'm really a jerk, man. These people are trying to help this, and I'm just not cooperating. But then I started working with another company that saw the film totally differently, and their notes, I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. It's like a chess game. Just hearing what they had to say and trying to kind of reconstruct some of the character ideas. So
I'm sorry. So it would be like a filmed opera, or rather than being staged live, or
yeah, it was supposed to be a film, but the people who were backing it eventually went a different direction. So there it sits on somebody else's shelf. But I got paid while I wrote it, so that was a really nice surprise. So real quickly, back to Deep Astronomy and the Romantic Sciences. That was birthed from Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club, and Red Planet Planning Commission came from the story of that. Now, what happened was I ended up having all this artwork and some animation and different footage from all these performances, and the performances were all concerts and science lectures. And I didn't want to make a road film, and I couldn't figure out how to write a screenplay to incorporate this stuff, because every time I tried to write it, I kept writing the same story over and over again, and it wasn't very good. And so then I decided at one point, I thought, well, what's the opposite of what I would do? Let's do the exact opposite of what I would do. And I thought, all right, whatever's popular is the opposite of what I would do. And I thought, all right, well, what's popular right now? And I looked about at everything I'd been seeing, and I thought, okay, lady robots, you know, female robots are very popular. So I'm going to write about a female robot. And then I thought, well, who do I like? And there was this young gentleman who I kept seeing at the corner at the liquor store. Every now and then we'd talk, and in his early 20s, a hip hop artist. And every time we'd see each other, we'd just stand on the corner and talk for like an hour or two. And I thought, I like Rudy. So I'm going to write a story about Rudy, this guy who I see sometimes, and a robot. And I did. And then I got so into the idea of Rudy being this character. I saw him one day and I said, you don't know me that well, but I wrote a story about you. And it's a screenplay. And I said, you ever act? He goes, no. I said, but you're a performer. You're a hip hop artist. He goes, yeah. I said, would you be interested in reading this part? I mean, basically it's written for you. And he said, yeah. And he read it and he was great. He was perfect. So there's a lot about Rudy and Grace. There's an EP called Rudy and Grace with 3 songs. And it tied in, it wove together all this material. It's a very different kind of narrative, this film. But it also comes from a very different place.
In terms of just like reading the synopsis about it, and it seems that it's a story about kind of a meetup in a bar that eventually kind of turns into a trial for humanity.
Yeah.
Is that a kind of a accurate? Okay.
Yeah, no, it was good.
Okay. But I'm intrigued. Like I said, I'm very intrigued by it. I guess on the site it says that it'll be premiering on YouTube on December the 5th.
No, it'll be on Vimeo. But I'm going to post it on the website. The website has Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club, Red Planet Planning Commission. It's redplanetplanningcommission.com. But what I'm doing is I was thinking I wanted to do whatever's best for the film. And so I put it in a couple of festivals. It really was not, it's an interesting film. Audiences love it. Every time I played it for sold out rooms, and the audiences love it. They stick around for an hour-long Q&A afterwards. It's been great. But selection committees at festivals don't seem to light up to it too much. But though it did play at Sci-Fi London and had a wonderful time, and it played at the Portland Eco Film Fest in Portland, Oregon. And that was, again, sold out screening. Everybody, really, really enjoyed it. So what I'm going to do now is basically give it back to everybody who built it. It's going to belong to all of us, and put it out there for free. I'm going to encourage people to use the stuff that they've created to make other things or to share it. Because a lot of stuff didn't end up in the film, of course, but having it as an option helped forge the film. So I see it all as a part of the film.
Okay. Well, to that, is that since it's going to be available on the website, is that would say during the next year or so, depending on your schedule, is it something where you would make appearance if festivals or something did want to play it? Would you appear with it or is that a viable?
No, if a festival wanted to play it, I'd say heck yeah. I want everyone to show it everywhere. And I want everybody who worked on it I want everybody who worked on it to share it, and I also want anybody who likes it to share it. And I know that I opened it up to a group of young people, and they've watched it several times and have shared it with their friends and family. So I'm hoping that a lot of people feel that way about it. It's very different. It's a different, like I said, it's a different kind of narrative. It had it had a different agenda from the beginning.
So all these things that have been incorporated. So there are, I gather, there's animation that some people did and it got incorporated into the film. There are these lectures which remind me of TED Talks. I don't know if that's what they're intended to be, but
Sure.
That's what I thought of. And then there's a framing narrative. And then I think there like little sculptures and things that are put into the sets or
Yeah, there was a couple of sculptures. One gentleman, oh, sorry, I can't think offhand. Sorry. He sent some sculptures, and so we decorated the set with those. There was a crew that drove out. It was the stuff with Rudy and Grace was shot at the Slipper Room here in Manhattan, and they let us borrow their club during the day, and wonderful film crew drove out from Birmingham, Alabama, and shot the the main glue of the film here with Rudy and Grace, and some other actors came in from California to be a part of it, and it was really it added a few inches to my optimistic side. I tell you, seeing the kindness and generosity rolling off of people. And also, to make it, I went on tour and I didn't have any money and I don't know how to drive. So people would pick me up and drive me from city to city and let me stay at their homes. And I made that part of the film too. So it was just, it was just relying on kindness.
and so another thing I guess that's incorporated is your musical performances, which are the part collaborations, but written by you, and those are also incorporated into this big stew.
Yeah, the performance of the musical performances were from the Small Star seminars, and those different people filmed them in different locations, and so there's like a whole slew of cinematographers for that stuff. It wasn't there. I didn't end up using a musical collaboration in the film itself. I used the collaboration to help construct the identity of the collaborative. But I also didn't know how to deal with other people's music legally. That's kind of that would have gotten that would have been outside of my field of expertise, is trying to figure out how to negotiate that stuff. So I just figured, okay, well, it's all, I'll just make it myself and make it quick.
Well, again, since also on the website it says with the collective that the motorcycle club is, I guess, is again active.
Yes.
Do you see do you see, I guess, not too much detail, but like more collaborative, more Captain You Have motorcycle club collaborations coming down the pike that we can look forward to?
Well, what I want is I want everybody to be able to get some credit for the things they've done, all the way from the beginning. And that would be, I mean, if somebody wanted to have a small screening and charge a cover, they could. If they if somebody wanted to make t-shirts out of their artwork, please do. If somebody shot some footage and it didn't end up in the film, they could make a clip, make their own clip, even if I'm in it, and just put it out there. Just feel free to make things. And I don't have any real hard plans. I never have really for this whole project. I'm just rolling with it and seeing what happens. But when something does spark like become something and needs like a little push in one direction or another, that that's what I do, is try to guide things that seem like they're going to be successful, not successful, like how we say successful, but the project itself,
I see we're kind of pressed for time. I wish we had more time because there's way more to ask you. But before we leave, I do have to bring this up. There are still big fans of the American Astronaut and Stingray Sam. What's the situation of that? Is there any chance of?
I don't really own them. They're more
right.
in the property of the people who finance them at this point. So
Okay.
we're not really in touch with each other. So I don't really have any say in that at the moment. So, and but hopefully people will find them and keep watching them and sharing them. And in the meantime, I'll just keep moving forward and making new things.
Well, I have a American Astronaut DVD, fortunately, so that's why you get physical media, kids.
Yeah.
Have it for-
and CD soundtrack. There's still
well,
there's a lot of material out there, boys and girls. So you gotta dig for it.
Yeah. You
We
gotta
oh, sorry. We are running out of time. We have a little over 2 minutes, and there are a couple things I wanted to get in at the last bit. First, what like website is the most important for people to go to follow what's coming up?
redplanetplanningcommission.com.
Okay.
Redplanetplanningcommission.com now houses Deep Astronomy and the Romantic Sciences, the Cultured Cell Culture, redplanetplanningcommission.com itself, and that's where we'll be watching Deep Astronomy and the Romantic Sciences, and also Cultured Cell Culture. They can find stuff there for that, and it's growing. It's going to be a growing website. Redplanetplanningcommission.com is where everything will end up.
All right. So that's the clearinghouse. That's good. And the other question is, I think you have dinner ready, but so if you can quickly,
On it, it's fine.
we typically ask a closing question as to what is your hometown and can you recommend a restaurant there? So if you can think of one in a minute, we can get it.
Oh, well, I live in New York. When people come to town, I always tell them to meet me for breakfast at a place called Joe Junior's in Manhattan, and on Third Street and Third Avenue, Third and 15th. Joe Junior's. It's I like to meet people for breakfast because I drink coffee and start to vibrate, and the conversation goes a lot quicker than having cocktails.
Excellent.
I get to eat eggs.
Yeah. Excellent. So we got it in, and someday we're going to like do I think a compilation of all the restaurant recommendations, just like once we get 30 minutes worth of them, we'll just do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. We talked about things nobody knew.
No, good to see you again. I hope to see you again in the near future. And I'll be watching for Deep Astronomy here in the next when it premieres in the next few weeks. So
Yeah. Well, good to see you again too.
hopefully, if things work out, could try to bring you to Lawrence. Could try to bring you around to Lawrence for.
I would love that. We can have a screening.
Yeah.
We can do stuff. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to say goodbye. Next